Hello guys, Professor Uprin here. I'm just going to very quickly, well, without breaking anything, I hope. Well, maybe I will break several things. It's kind of hard to do recordings in small rooms. Work my way through the second half of the syntax chapter. I'm going to draw your attention, well, I'm going to bring you to the set of rules about 2/3 of the way down page 115 of the Linguistics for Dummies text. And you'll see that I'm looking at a set of 5 rules. On the left it says what the rule does, and on the right there's the rule itself. Now, these aren't really rules. These aren't like quadratic equations, although they look like quadratic equations. If you look at the expands S, the first one, S arrow NPVP, all that's saying is that S, a sentence, consists of an NP, a noun phrase, and a verb phrase, VP. That's all. Every sentence follows that rule. So this rule is inviolable. The other 4 rules are kind of simplified, but they really do much the same thing. Number 2 here, VP arrow V parentheses NP parentheses ADVP. All this says is a verb phrase consists of a verb, an optional noun phrase, and an optional adverbial phrase. That's all. The parentheses means optional. The third rule, NP, noun phrase, consists of a determiner, an adjective phrase, and a noun. The fourth rule, ADJP, arrow, parentheses, deg, ADJ, that just means an adjective phrase consists of an optional degree word, usually very or something like that, or quite perhaps, and an adjective. And finally, number 5 here, ADVP, adverb phrase, consists of, again, an optional degree word like very or quite, and ADV, an adverb. That's all. So we're going to bring ourselves to those rules starting on page 106, so about 9 pages earlier. And honestly, this text isn't called Linguistics for Dummies for nothing. It's teaching linguistics at a really simple level. And possibly, if you are a little worried by the layout and the approach of this chapter, it's because they're hammering the simplicity of the subject home so forcefully that you're looking for something else more complicated there, and there isn't actually anything more complicated. Now, I'm glad to see that the second half of this chapter opens with the date 1957. I'm on page 106 here, down at the bottom, and this recognizes Noam Chomsky, the famous linguist, as having made several very significant discoveries in the late 1950s regarding the way the human brain manages language. And one of his major discoveries was that we don't think in series of words like we thought. It's not determiner, noun, verb, determiner, noun, adjective, blah, 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 blah. Instead, we're thinking in chunks, phrase, phrase, phrase. So just like I said, every English sentence, by the way, these rules only work for, sorry, my phone is making noise, so I'm silencing it. Every language has its own set of syntactic rules. The rules we just looked at on page 115, was it, of the text, are specific to English. And every English sentence consists of a noun phrase, a verb phrase. So here's the most simple sentence you could come up with. John sleeps. Noun phrase, verb phrase. But you can come up with very complicated sentences as well. They still meet the same criteria. The very angry astronaut who crashed his plane on my roof sleeps. It's still the same thing. Noun phrase, verb phrase. Or how about this? John slept in my guest bedroom after drinking too much beer at the party last night. It's still noun phrase, verb phrase. John and everything else, which is the verb phrase. In essence, this is the old approach, subject predicate, doer and everything else. So it's as simple as that. Now, the diagram, table 6.1 on page 107, shows one potential approach to breaking sentences down. You can have a simple sentence, NV, at the top there, Alice side, or you can have a complicated sentence, determiner, noun, verb, determiner, adjective, noun. The girl saw the white rabbit. And as the text says, you're now in a heap of trouble. As you try to work through other lexical categories, you'll find the templates get longer and longer and longer. That is to say, approaching sentences by simply labeling words is going to make for very long and unclear explanations. What if we can explain sentences using the phrase approach? That is to say, S arrow NPVP. A sentence consists of a noun phrase and a verb phrase. So even then, the girl saw the white rabbit is simply the girl, noun phrase, saw the white rabbit, verb phrase. Simple as that. By the way, we've seen this already, but I just draw your attention to the abbreviations at the bottom of page 106 again. N, V, ADJ, ADV, it's all the parts of speech. This is the stuff we did at the start of semester. Remember, we looked at the parts of speech, so you should know this stuff. You should be able to identify a noun, a verb, an adjective, an adverb, a determiner, a complementizer. It's all explained in the first half of this chapter anyway. I know the word complementizer is a little, is probably new to you, but it's just that word you use to introduce subclauses. John will say, that Mary left. It's the that there. That's a complementizer. But otherwise, everything else is categories you know. Okay. Now, one of Chomsky's major discoveries was recursion. And all this means is it isn't just that a sentence consists of, let's say, NP-VP. It's that the NP can itself contain, let's say, a prepositional phrase, which itself contains an NP. That is to say, you can have phrases inside phrases inside phrases. So take a look at table 6.2, which explains recursion a little. It's a little more complicated than it needs to be, but the idea is fine. You can have a sentence inside a sentence inside a sentence. So, Ed left. Easy sentence. Mary thinks Ed left. That's another sentence, but you can see that it's a sentence containing a sentence. That is to say, Mary thinks Ed left contains the sentence Ed left. Ed left. Now, how about this? Alice said Mary thinks Ed left. You've got three sentences. You have Ed left. Inside the sentence, Mary thinks Ed left. Inside the sentence, Alice said Mary thinks Ed left. And I'm not finished. We can put those three inside another one. Lucy thinks Alice said Mary thinks Ed left. So we got Ed left. Inside the sentence, Mary thinks Ed left. Inside the sentence, Alice said Mary thinks Ed left. Inside the sentence, Lucy thinks Alice said Mary thinks Ed left. This is recursion. You can have phrases inside phrases inside phrases. In this case, it's a sentence inside a sentence inside a sentence. But the concept is the same. Now, you can. A way of looking at how phrases are contained is by using what are called tree diagrams. And this chapter goes, it presents a really simplistic concept of tree diagrams on pages 110, 111. So you can see, I'll just draw, I'll use the example of C at the top of page 111. You know Alice thinks Ed left, or whatever it might be. And you can see Alice thinks Ed left. Well, Ed left is just 3 dots there. Ed left is an S, a sentence contained inside the sentence, Alice thinks Ed left. And Alice thinks Ed left is a sentence contained inside the sentence, you know Alice thinks Ed left. So you can see the tree diagram is putting the most, the sentence that is nested most far inside, if you like, at the very bottom of the tree diagram. And it's putting the least nested entity, which is the whole sentence, which might contain things, at the very top of the tree diagram. It's the S at the top of that tree diagram there. All right. Now, recursion, which I spoke about there. And recursion, by the way, is one of Chomsky's major discoveries in that 1957 work. He realized that you could simplify sentences by explaining their length through putting phrases inside, maybe clauses inside sentences, whatever it is. So containers inside containers. Russian dolls, if you like. Okay, now this mobile making process, starting page 108, is a really simplistic way of explaining the tree diagrams I just spoke about. But it's a place to start. We'll ignore the idea of phrase theory for the time being, the NPs and the VPs. We'll get to that in a few minutes. And take a look at the 2 proposed structures for sentences that we have there at the top of page 109. S arrow NV and S arrow NVN. Now, if you think about it, that explains simple intransitive sentences and simple transitive sentences. NV, John slept. NVN, transitive, John kicked the cat. Okay, so you've got 2 possible sentence structures there. Now, let's make tree diagrams for them. Let's go halfway down the page, 109, and now you can see S arrow NV is represented in a tree diagram by putting the S at the top of the tree and NV as 2 separate branches of the tree. Then SNVN, let's say John sees Mary, something like that. John sees and Mary, they're all nodes of at the end of 3 branches, all starting at S there. Okay, so we could expand this a little. We're going to add 2 more potential sentence structures here. So you'll see we have a list of 4 now at the bottom of page 109. We're going to add S arrow DNV. That's just determiner noun verb. The dog sleeps. And we're going to add S arrow DNVDN. Honestly, it's the same transitive verb structure that we looked at. We're just adding determiners. DNVDN, the dog bites the man, for example. So we've got 4 potential structures for sentences. That's great. Now we're going to add a 5th. I've turned the page. I'm on page 110 here. I'm adding S arrow NVS. A sentence may consist of a noun, a verb, and another sentence. Now you'll see why earlier on in the course I was fudging about the difference between clause and sentence, because a clause really is a sentence, it just can't stand alone. So let's say that we have a sentence like Mary saw David. Let's keep that in mind for a moment. Now, I'm going to posit a sentence, John says a word. That's fine, isn't it? and it's more or less noun, verb, noun. John says a word. Now, how about the following? John says Mary saw David. That's acceptable too, isn't it? And yet Mary saw David is a sentence. So what we have is NVS. John says that Mary saw David, or John says Mary saw David. You can put sentences inside sentences using rule number 5. That's the important thing, and that's the whole concept of recursion. You can put things inside things. So examples A, B, C, and D, halfway down page 110, just reflect the Lucy thinks Alice said, Mary thinks Ed left. Example at the top of page 108, and you can see some actual examples of that with A, B, and C at the top of page 111. So that's recursion explained, I hope. Now let's move on to phrases. The only problem with the 4 rules we have at the top of page 110 is we need 4 rules to explain sentences, and that seems overkill. It would be nice to have a single rule to explain sentences. Now, if you jump ahead to page 115, you'll find that we actually do have that rule. Go 2/3 of the way down the page, and you'll see at the top of the list of 5 rules, SRONPVP. Sentence consists of noun phrase, verb phrase. That's a rule that works for all sentences, all English sentences, but it works for all sentences. The other 4 rules you see there explain phrases. Now, I'm turning the page here, going to page 112 here, and the 7 rules, let's call them, halfway down the page 112, are actually the text's example of what we should not be doing. These are overcomplicated because we have sentences consisting of NVN, sentences consisting of NV determiner N, sentences consisting of NV determiner adjective noun, etc. As the text says, that's a lot of rules, and we don't need all those rules. Let's ignore sentence rules for the time being, and let's introduce the noun phrase. Well, no, we'll keep the sentence rule. At the top of page 113, you'll see that we're positing a rule. We're going to be changing this a bit, but we'll take the rule as it stands. S consists of NP, V, NP. Example, John kicks the cat. But number 2 here, at the top of page 113, is the important bit. NP, noun phrase. Noun phrase consists of determiner, adjective, and N. And note that the DET and the ADJ are in parentheses. They're optional. You can have a noun phrase consisting of a noun, John, or you can have a noun phrase consisting of 3 words, determiner, adjective, and noun. But the determiner and adjective are optional. The angry astronaut. Yeah. Okay. So how do we know that that NP is a phrase? That is to say that those 3 words hang together. Well, I can remove all 3 and replace them with a pronoun. Take a look at the example 1/3 of the way down, page 113. I saw the big dog and Lucy saw it too. What does that it stand for? It isn't standing for the big. It's not standing for big dog. It's standing for all 3 of those words, the big dog. That is to say, the only thing that the it can stand for is a group of 3 words. And that strongly suggests to us that that group of 3 is a phrase. It's a standalone phrase that can, well, as we're about to see, it can move as well. The second test for phrasality is movement. Now, the example is extremely simple provided here. I love donuts. You can say instead, donuts I love. Awkward sounding sentence, but it works. In the same way, Lucy saw the big dog. You could say, again, it's awkward, but it works. The big dog Lucy saw. Might have to add a comma there, but it works. The point is, you couldn't say the big Lucy saw dog. You cannot break the three words up. They have to stick together. You can move them. The big dog, comma, Lucy saw. But those three words have to stick together. So a good test for phrasality is, number one, can you substitute it? And number two, can you move it? If you can substitute it with a single word, it's a standalone phrase. If you can move it, what do you have to move? Because those words are part of the same phrase if they all have to move together. Okay, so that's noun phrases. Verb phrases, page 113. We're going to add a third rule to our approach. And you can see we've now accepted that our sentence consists of a noun phrase, verb phrase, S, arrow, NP, VP. We're going to accept also that noun phrase NP consists of determiner, adjective, noun, with determiner and adjective being optional. And now verb phrase. We're going to argue that a verb phrase consists of a verb and an optional noun phrase. This isn't really an argument because we have plenty of examples. Slept, John slept, single verb. Kicked the cat, John kicked the cat. Verb phrase, noun phrase. But can we prove that VPs are actually phrases? Well, take a look at the two examples provided on page 114. Substitution. Can we replace our verb phrases with a pronoun or a pronoun-like object? In this case, it's going to be the stand for all verb did. Alice saw the rabbit and Lucy did too. Now, what's the did standing for? If you answer saw the rabbit, you understand what I'm talking about. Did is standing for the entire verb phrase. Alice saw the rabbit and Lucy did too. The did is standing for the rabbit. Is standing for the verb phrase saw the rabbit. Can a verb phrase move? That's the other test. Take a look at the example provided, the second example provided under movement there. I said I would finish the book, and finish the book I will. Now, the whole verb phrase has to move. You can't just move two of the words. So you can't say, I said I would finish the book, and the book well, that is going to work actually. I said I would finish the book, and the book I will. There, that works. Or I said I would finish the book and finish the I will. You have to move all three words. So verb phrases can move, but they have to move with all the words in them intact and in the same order. So there's the verb phrase test. So yeah, how do we define object? We have said in the old approach that the object comes straight after the verb. Well, you're kind of right. John kicked the cat. The cat is clearly the object. But now we have syntactic rules to define it. And that's all that's being said 2 paragraphs from the bottom of page 114 here. It's the NP within the verb phrase. Now, there's an important observation that the text slips in here, but it is worth noting. You remember that we were talking about recursion with sentences. Lucy thinks, Alice said, Mary thinks, Ed left. We haven't really explained how we can get sentences inside sentences. Well, what we're going to argue is that those sentences are nominal, the ones inside other sentences. They're behaving like nouns. So you can say, Lucy said a word. A word is clearly a noun phrase. But you can also say, Lucy said John arrived. John arrived isn't a noun phrase. It's a sentence, isn't it? So we're going to argue that embedded sentences are going to behave like nouns. In fact, you'll find at advanced levels that we can find embedded sentences, clauses, behaving like adjectives and adverbs as well. But we're just at this point, this very simple point of our syntactic introduction, saying that our embedded sentences are going to be nouns. Now, let's move on to page 115. We're nearly done. There are other phrase groupings as well. There are adjective phrases, and they're usually quite simple. You get a degree marker, which we abbreviate DEG, and the adjective itself. So the very angry astronaut. Very is our degree there. And it's optional, isn't it? You can just say the angry astronaut and still have a functioning sentence, or indeed a functioning phrase. So we have adjective phrases. We have adverb phrases. And again, they're really just adverbs with a degree attached. Let's see, how would we say? Alice followed the rabbit very happily. Very there is a word of degree. It's modifying the adverb happily, and very happily is our adverb phrase. And finally, prepositional phrases, PP. A preposition just consists of a preposition and a noun phrase. There are no exceptions to that. You don't have prepositional phrases standing alone. They have to have noun phrases after them. You can't say John went to. You have to say John went to the event. You can't say up. Well, you can kind of, but let's see how would I. Under. John slept under. Under what? You have to put a noun phrase afterwards. So prepositional phrases will always have a preposition and a noun phrase. So this brings us exactly to where I started this lecture at, 2/3 of the way down page 115. We have 5 rules for forming phrases. We have a sentence forming rule. Sentence consists of noun phrase, verb phrase. We have a verb phrase rule. A verb phrase consists of a verb, an optional noun phrase, and an optional adverbial phrase. We have a noun phrase rule. NP consists of determiner, adjective phrase, and N, with the determiner and the adjective phrase optional. Rule number 4, adjective phrase consists of a degree word and adjective, with the degree word optional. And finally, 5, adverbial phrases. An adverbial phrase consists of an optional degree word and an adverb. There. Now, the rest of this chapter, the half page or so on the and hat trick, just says that you can expand any category and any phrase by using a conjunction. So you can expand a sentence. You can an S can, in essence, consist of an S plus S. John slept and Mary slept too, I guess. I don't know. Or you can put a conjunction between 2 nouns. The angry man and woman entered the house. Or you can put the and between 2 NPs. The angry man and the angry woman entered the house. So you have the idea. In essence, at the top of page 116, this weird-looking table is just saying a noun can consist of a noun, a conjunction, and a noun, or a verb can consist of a verb, a conjunction, and a verb, or at phrase level, a noun phrase can consist of a noun phrase conjunction and a noun phrase, or a verb phrase can consist of a verb phrase, a conjunction and a verb phrase, etc. So that hopefully explains syntax, and hopefully you are a little less hostile to the concept of these algebra seeming phrase rules like you see on page 115, and you'll understand how simple they actually are. So hope that's useful. Hope you enjoyed the lecture, and you'll certainly be able to do the homework. Homework for this unit is an essay on syntactic theory and an application of phrase theory. That's easy enough, and I hope you will have that done by midnight on Monday night, as I have asked. Enjoy, and we'll talk soon.